bill we're voting for, Build Back Better, is a perfect example.
Small business owners, use Melio to send and receive ACH payments completely free. Melio is an
about pop culture, but it's from our perspective, freedom, independent values, things like that. So it's definitely something you want to check out. And most importantly, as a member, it funds our journalists. That's it. What I'm hoping to do is just get more and more writers on more and more subjects, tackle these issues, to fact check them, and do a better and better job. Far from perfect, but better than what you're going to get from the mainstream media. And that's the intention. Everything we're doing is when you guys sign up, we can allocate those funds straight to hiring more journalists. And we just hired another journalist, Michael Robison. He's got monkeys. It's really cool. Look at my Instagram, at Timcast. And we were just hanging out. We got to meet one of the monkeys, so really cool stuff. And he writes fantastic articles. So again, don't forget to support our work. Smash the like button right now. Subscribe to this channel. Share the show with your friends. Let's get started with this story. We were initially going to start with Jussie, but I think this is actually more important context as we get into Black Lives Matter. From the Daily Mail, quote, "We are not going to surrender to Black Lives Matter. New York City Mayor-elect Eric Adams warns BLM leader Hawk Newsom not to, quote, burn down the Big Apple, and refuses to back down on reinstating plainclothes NYPD units." It's kind of crazy when we're at a point where the mayor of, the biggest city in the country is warning a group of leftist activists not to burn the city down. Shouldn't there be a little bit more than that? Like, hey, you threatened to burn the city down. Like, that's a terroristic threat. You guys literally did smash windows and destroy things a year ago. Maybe those threats are not idle threats, and there should be some legal ramifications. Maybe a slap on the wrist. Maybe they at least need to come out and be like, don't threaten to burn it all down. But how many times do they say this stuff?
Yeah, they say it a lot. BLM says this a lot. And Hawk Newsom also is much further to the left, I think, even than the national BLM groups. And he's spoken out against the national BLM groups. He's one of the ones who was bringing suit against them for having fundraised all that money, and nobody saw any of that money except Patrice Cullors got a bunch of new houses or something.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Well, it was for her family.
It was for her, sure.
She's doing very well for herself.
Yeah, I mean, every family needs a nice little house in Topanga Canyon, right?
A couple of them, not just one, a few,
A couple were like $500,000 houses.
Yeah. But so the thing about Newsom is he's very vigilant about that. I actually talked with him after there was a whole incident uptown with some tourists who were in town and they didn't want to show their Vax cards or something like that, and they ended up getting kicked out of Carmine's. And then when I talked to him about it, he was like, actually, the hostess was racist and used racist language and this whole thing. But yeah, he's very vigilant against the plainclothes cops, and I want the plainclothes cops back on the street. Pulling them off the street has been a disaster. That's how the police know what's going on in the community. They're there on the street. They're involved.
The context is that when they defunded the police in New York, they got rid of the anti-crime unit.
That's right.
And then crime skyrocketed. Murders, muggings, violent crime.
Who's getting killed? Black kids are getting killed. Yeah. That's what's happening. Black people are getting murdered. So, people were shocked. The super lefties that I know were shocked when Eric Adams won the Democratic primary, which essentially meant that he was going to be mayor, which he is going to be. They all wanted Maya Wiley and these far left progressives, but the black communities, the conservative communities, the Latino communities all wanted Adams. And it's pretty clear why they wanted him. He's from the city. He was a DA.
He was a cop.
Yeah, and he's definitely going to crack down on crime in these neighborhoods and save black lives. That's what he's going to do.
I'm glad to hear it. Maybe I don't agree with this guy. I'm not a fan of what the Democrats have become. But if people are expressing their support for a cop, as much as I can say, there's a lot of things that I don't like about the NYPD, the CPD, regular people saying, you know what we hate more? We hate you burning down our businesses and throwing rocks through our windows.
Right.
This is a pie in the face to the extremist woke left.
But when they did break windows, when they did bust down businesses, when they did steal from private enterprises, you saw the police department stand back and kind of watch everything happen. You saw some of the high command of the NYPD literally get on their knees with the mayor saying, we support you guys, as of course they were causing massive chaos, massive pain for the average citizen. So, the previous administration acquiesced totally to BLM. They wrote their name in front of Trump's tower and arrested anyone who dared to express another political opinion across that particular street. So to see this kind of transition, it's not even a major transition. It's just the guy saying, hey, we're not going to have any bloodshed. We're not going to have any rioting here. I mean, that should be a normal statement. It's nothing out of the ordinary and shouldn't be.
Yeah, I mean, de Blasio also did not think that New Yorkers cared about their own quality of life. And I've talked to members of city council about this, who said that there are members of city council who don't think that their constituents care about quality of life. And anyone who lives in New York, there isn't anything else. That is literally the only thing there is. There's really expensive everything and not getting trash in your face and stabbed when you walk down the street. So that's the important thing. And if Adams can bring some of that back, that's a good thing. But I still, I don't agree with any of the vax mandate stuff. He's come out in favor of that. We now have a new mask mandate in the entire state because of the stupid idiot garbage. No one elected her governor.
Yes.
The next person's always worse, right?
Right. It's always worse. That's what I'm thinking too. It's like if we get rid of Biden, we have Kamala, and she is just even the worst of the worst. She's terrible. Yeah, and this whole thing with the masking now, businesses are going to be able to decide if you have to wear a mask or if you have to show your vaccine card or whatever.
I want to address what Luke was saying about the police, because I think there is an interesting kind of double-edged sword here. I'm not a big fan of what the police were doing, letting people suffer. But I guess my point is more like regular people, when they say they want Eric Adams, they are saying no to Black Lives Matter and Antifa extremists. And we needed people to stand up and say something to that. Now, it is, I think, an issue when you have a police department and you have the whole city and the core Democrat movement being like, abolish or defund the police. Well, it's no surprise that when the cops are like, we don't have the resources to deal with this, so we're not going to deal with it. You can't expect me to go out and then put my life on the line when you will not stand up and defend us as well.
Right.
You had in New York, I think it was in New York, the police came out and said, we are being slammed in the media for all of these crimes when there were 375 million police interactions and only, I think it was 9 unarmed black men being killed, or 13 or whatever.
Yeah.
So the media is just drumming up all of this hate for cops when 99.99% of cops are just routine stops.
Right. That's exactly
most of them, but they also did shut down private businesses in Staten Island that were going against the lockdowns. The NYPD it's one of the most funded police departments, I think, in the entire world. I believe their budget, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you would know this more than I would, Libby. Their budget was $6 billion, now it's $5 billion, is that correct?
They did pull a billion, but it wasn't the NYPD shutting down restaurants in Staten Island.
It was the sheriffs.
That was the state. That was under Cuomo's jurisdiction.
Yes, but it's still police officers that came in.
It was, but it was not the NYPD.
Okay.
Because the NYPD, if you were walking around going to, basically were speakeasies during the pandemic, the NYPD did not come bother you at all.
They brought in state troopers.
That was what was going on in Staten Island. That was not NYPD.
That's corruption. These cops that are basically like Attila's Gym in New Jersey. The local cops showed up, and the cops said something like, "You're in violation of public ordinance." That being said, have a nice day, folks, and they all clapped and cheered.
Right.
So what did the city do? They called outside departments to come in, and the outside cops, with a smile on their face, were like, "I don't know you, I don't care about you, screw off." Callousness. That to me is like, you know what, man? These cops may be from out of the community, but people need a way to call them out, shun them for violating human rights. The decree of an executive does not give police the authority to do these things.
No, I mean, people have to stand up for their own values. And it turns out, that's one of the hardest things for anybody to do, is to have a value system, make their decisions based on that value system, and to uphold it with their
This is
their
why
lives every day. You know?
this is why I'm like, during the whole George Floyd riots and stuff, I was kind of like, in many circumstances, if the cops aren't going to defend people who want to abolish the police, I mean, good. This is what people have asked for, and the cops
Right.
are giving it to them.
Right.
That being said, when you then get police going to small businesses and putting the jackboot down, I'm like, you want me to defend you now? Not going to happen as an institution.
Well, in a lot of it's not the police that are going around, enforcing these restrictions. It's individuals and business owners who are
That's right.
enforcing the restrictions.
For the most part, New York especially.
Yeah, and that's sort of the worst case scenario. I think if it was police coming in, we could all be like, no, police, don't do that. But it's individuals standing against other individuals. It's citizens taking up the enforcement. It's citizen middle managers.
Well, the difference, I think, is in, like, New York, it's mostly the individual restaurant owners are the enforcers of these mandates.
That's right.
But there still are many circumstances in which police were engaging in this behavior. So this Jim, as I mentioned, the woman who was trying to sell things on Facebook Live in North Jersey. So we've seen several instances of this, and I'm not gonna come out and defend organizations that take the goodwill. When we defend the police, say defunding them is insane. If anything, they need better training, better funding, better programs. And then what happens? They say, screw the little guy. We don't care. We're told to do it, so we'll do it. Granted, as you mentioned, a lot of NYPD were just like, nope.
Right.
I've heard stories from people in New York where they were like, people have, tried calling the cops over people are refusing to leave with masks, and the cops just laugh.
Yeah.
They're like, what do you want me to do about it, dude?
Right.
They're like, we're not coming out for this. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, my experience recently in New York City, tell me if you're wrong, maybe this was just particularly in the neighborhood that I was in. No one's enforcing anything. As far as mask mandates, I haven't seen any kind of enforcement of that in local businesses and private businesses. Vax mandates, no one asked me about my papers. No one asked me to put on a mask. Those are the experiences that I just had a few days ago. Are you seeing the same kind of just not caring about any of this kind of bureaucracy made up decrees?
There's a lot of people that don't care. There's a lot of, I went to a diner the other day, and it was like, I'm not going to say where it was because I don't want them to get in trouble. There was no issue. The vax mandates now have extended to children, so children are supposed to now show their vaccine cards, and a lot of places are not going to enforce that either. Also, the mask mandate that came down from Kathy Hochul today is like businesses get to decide, so you can enforce it yourself, which also kind of means like businesses that are doing badly, are they really going to stand there and be like, put on your mask or you can't come in? I wouldn't. I'd be like, come on in, please buy some stuff. But there's been a lot of places that are not asking for vaccine paperwork or anything else because they want people to come in.
Yeah,
and also they don't care. There's also, though, a ton of people, more than I've seen in a long time, walking around outside with masks on, in their cars by themselves with masks
Watching
on.
CNN too much.
Right? And there's the subway. People are like fully masked on the subway. It'll be like, I'll be on the subway and I'll see somebody and we'll be like, oh, what's up? Nice.
I want to pull up this
Two
story.
people without a mask on.
We have this story from Star Tribune, and this is despicable. Albert Lee restaurant owner found guilty of violating state COVID mandate. A jury of 3 women and 3 men took only an hour of deliberation to convict Lisa Hansen. She was sentenced to, where do we have the sentencing down here? It's there we go. She was sentenced to 90 days in jail, which began immediately, and a $1,000 fine, considerably more than what Albert Lee City Attorney Kelly Dawn Martinez, who prosecuted the case, had sought. Meaning the prosecutor didn't even want it to go that crazy, and the judge was like, nah, lock her up 3 months. Why? Because she opened her wine and beer bar, flouting Tim Walz's executive order to shut down last winter during the COVID-19 pandemic, and was found guilty of 6 criminal misdemeanor counts Thursday by a Freeborn County jury. It was cops who came and arrested her for this.
This is Minnesota.
This is Minnesota. She fled to Iowa, and then sheriff deputies came and arrested her. So these are people, these are officers. Look, you got to understand, in places like New York City, as much as you might be saying, like, well, the NYPD weren't the ones going out and doing this, the leadership were appointed by Democrats. They do not believe in the same moral systems, moral frameworks, and values that we here do.
Right.
Just because we might be like, there are good cops out there and they're besmirching the name of officers over a few fringe cases, you need to realize that in places like Seattle, there are Antifa cops.
Right, there
No
sure
joke.
are. Yeah, I mean, there was an Antifa person running for the, basically, like, Attorney General of the city in Seattle. And then, she lost, but she was entrenched, she was running for that. It's interesting, too. I was talking to some friends about this the other day. There's a there's definitely a difference today between the way that Republicans and Democrats, conservatives, liberals, whatever terminology you want to use, approach things. It used to be that everyone basically seemed to have the same goal, and the question was, how do we get there? What is the process? I don't think there's the same goal in mind at all, and I don't think that there's even a similarity of worldview at this point.
Yeah, I think for the most part, everyone's become increasingly selfish. And like the judge in this case or the prosecutors, they're just basically like, I'm going to get mine.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care.
I mean, we're seeing what's happening all around the world, and it should be a warning shot to the rest of the world, especially with what's happening in Germany, in Australia, in Austria, in Italy, in France, where we're seeing just, elderly women walking by, big police officers grabbing their hands, demanding to see their papers, demanding to see their identification, and throwing them in jail, giving them huge fines, stealing their hard-earned money, punishing them, scaring the crap out of them because they didn't comply with the whims of the state. I think what's happening around the world in some of these places is what a lot of politicians want to happen here in the United States, and I think because of people fighting against it, because of people not complying, because of the state of Florida, and other people saying, hey, I believe in my human rights, I have dignity, I have a life here that I will fight for, and I will protect no matter what. I think that's one of the only reasons why society totally hasn't gone the way as many other societies have gone to, where even protesting, even just simply complaining is banned or made illegal. And it's absolutely crazy to see that happen in Australia, to see that happen all over Europe, where you can't even protest. That's crazy.
We have that here with corporations. Corporations ban protests in the U.S.
How so?
Well, you have Twitter, you have social media platforms.
Yeah. Well, they ban
refusing-
speech.
They ban speech, and speech is protest.
Yeah,
Protest is
and they
speech,
also
rather.
ban people from organizing
Yes,
and
that's
from
correct.
having groups
That's
and
correct.
doing events together.
And covering the Ghislaine Maxwell trial.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
What the
another
hell
big
was
one.
That?
Yeah.
It's obvious what they're
Yes.
doing. They're like, it's bad enough we had to pull this stupid campaign with Maxwell anyway. The last thing we want is someone to be tweeting.
Right.
Yeah. Or just
No
even
talking about the
about-
justice system.
or just
Unless
how
you're
the
saying it's terrible.
or just how the
That's
government
it.
took your tax dollars for over 30 years and ran an international extortion child trafficking operation. That's another big one,
Okay.
Yeah, that's
I'll take
something that
sources
people.
on that.
That's some,
I mean,
I'll give you some.
Okay.
Oh, I got a whole bunch of them.
But look. I think we've seen a lot of the details out of the Epstein stuff, and now I'm kind of getting off the rails from where we just were. It's like these small town cops arresting this woman, and then Epstein and an internet.
Right.
No, but I will say there's a simpler thing. It's like you've got how much of our money without our consent goes to literally bombing civilians.
Right.
And for some nebulous cause where they tell us, what are they saying? They were saying on TV about Ukraine, we fight over there, so we don't got to fight here. And I'm like, you think Russia's going to invade
Russia's
the
not gonna
continental
invade us,
U.S.?
yeah. And that's
Let alone
not-
Hawaii.
And then just a really quick point before I'm going to leave it up to you. I think it is interconnected because there was police officers in New York City, in Florida, that knew exactly what was going on. They had the victims, they had children that were coming to them, and they were told to shut up by their superiors, and they had to shut up, and there was no justice for thousands of victims and thousands of children that came forward. So sorry, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. You didn't know about this, Libby?
No, I don't know all about that.
Okay.
Oh, the Epstein stuff is
Yeah,
crazy.
the Epstein stuff is utterly insane.
I've read about the Epstein
Yeah,
stuff.
there's a number
I
of
know.
police officers
But-
that fell into depression. There's a number of police
Mm-hmm.
officers that were silenced, shunned, and couldn't do their job because the higher up said, shut up, obey our orders, and they did, and they had to.
That's what goes on with a lot of things.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty clear.
yeah, and it happens in some of the most atrocious atrocities that we can't even mention or talk about. And that to me is frustrating to understand people still putting a lot of their faith and a lot of their power and a lot of their hope, which I think is needless, into this kind of system that they're going to be doing the right thing. I think we should be more skeptical than just hopeful from my perspective.
When I think about cops defunding police and police organization, I think like trash people pick up the trash, and you're like, okay, if there's an organization of trash men across the United States and a small group of them started dumping trash on lawns, and they were like, F this, we hate these, and they're like targeting black people, some racist trash men. You wouldn't say like defund trash people.
No, you
more
wouldn't.
trash
We
pickup.
totally need the garbage
Yeah,
collector.
and we need the cops. Same. So like,
Right.
how do you deal with
or
corruption
just
and
firefighters
and policing?
You know what I mean? If
Police
there
have
was
guns.
a video, imagine a video of a firefighter at a fire, and he's got the hose, and a little old lady walks by, and he just sprays her, and she gets knocked over, and they're like, "Time to shut down the fire department.
Oh my
You
God.
fire them
Yeah.
all.
Right.
It's
on the
over."
fire.
How do you hold them accountable? You criticize every time they do something wrong. You try to hold them accountable, and if they're not held accountable, they shouldn't have any institutional power or money until they can be accountable, until they can be trustworthy, until they can be honest and real with the people that they're serving. Because they're supposed to be serving the people, not doing the bidding of the special interests that many times they just take the orders blindly and do whatever they want.
There was a big thing during Occupy Wall Street where NYPD were working in uniform as private security for wealthy individuals
Right.
who wanted to go to restaurants in the financial district.
Right. That makes sense.
So you come out as a protester and you see police officers in uniform, badges and everything, and then you realize they were hired as private security for the wealthy elites of New York City.
There's a lot of cops
that-
that moonlight as security.
But in uniform with their badges.
I don't think they're supposed to do that.
Well, there's an official program within the NYPD where corporations could hire police officers to show up at their businesses. Many banks use police officers and hire them. I don't know if this program still exists, but I know it did exist a few years ago.
Yeah.
And they were able to pay their salaries, and they would show up particularly protect their business and essentially just stand around there because that was a deterrent for a lot of criminals seeing, oh, there's a police officer here, I won't come and steal from this place. Oops, sorry.
Trash in the joint.
Dude, their job is to protect people, but their real job is to do what their supervisor tells them to do, or they're going to lose the job.
Yeah.
So like that's a big conflict of interest right off the bat.
Including
That's true
up
with
to some of the
soldiers,
worst
though,
atrocities.
As well. I mean,
Yeah.
isn't that true of soldiers? Isn't that true of the military? Any of these kind of enforcement organizations are all about making sure that the people are following the orders. Like, you can't have a bunch of people. It just wouldn't work if everyone was out there making their own assumptions about how the law works. You know, there has to be a coordinated effort in order for it to be successful.
And right now it's running through people like authoritarian individuals. So maybe in the future the system will be altered so that we'll be able to police without having authority telling people what to do.
I don't think that's really how it works. I think there always has to be authority to tell people. If you're going to have some sort of army, people have to follow the orders in the army.
What
I'm
about
not
policing though?
policing. I mean, in New York City, like that's an army to a certain extent.
Yeah, how many is
Yeah.
like 30-something thousand?
It's a lot. It's a lot of people. And the thing, too, that happened in New York is that a bunch of low-level crimes basically got decriminalized and stopped being prosecuted. So that just opened the door for criminals to do bigger crimes, you know? And the way that the smaller crimes worked, I was actually listening to a podcast about this with Inez. And Inez's podcast. But essentially, the idea is that those low-level crimes are now decriminalized. The idea was not that those low-level crimes are there to be prosecuted and send people to prison. It's so that police have an intervention point, an early intervention point, right? So if you're standing there on the street corner smoking a joint, then the police can be like, hey, what's up? You're standing here on the street corner smoking a joint. That's an intervention point.
Right.
If turnstile jumping, right? Hey, you just jumped the turnstile. That's an intervention point. What else is going on?
Right.
And when you have a bunch of crimes, right, and then people plead down once they're in the court system. So then you have like, this person went up for a drug offense for, 5 years. Did they really go up just for the drug offense? Like, they pled down a whole bunch of other charges and landed with one and took a sentence. It's sort of interesting. I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but it makes sense when you start thinking about it in that way.
Let's talk about some wins. We got the story from Newsweek by journalist Andy No.
Oh.
Prosecutors make first move to break up Antifa cell as 11 activists charged with violence. Now, this is not an opinion piece. This is a factual news report by Andy No for Newsweek. And the reason I'm emphasizing a factual news report by journalist Andy No is because Antifa and these extremists have tried their hardest to smear and besmirch his name simply for reporting on what they do. This is it. Newsweek is not some far-right publication or some conspiracy blog. Newsweek's actually fairly left-leaning. And here we have a factual news piece. You see, prosecutors are actually going after Antifa. They say, Andy writes, this week, the San Diego County District Attorney's Office charged 11 alleged Antifa members with felony conspiracy and felony assault charges, among other crimes in a riot case where supporters of former President Donald Trump and random bystanders were beaten in Pacific Beach, California in January. 8 suspects were arraigned this week. They have all pleaded not guilty. There's videos of what happened. There are reports that there were minors who were simply walking down the street, and Antifa decided to attack and pepper spray them. There was a guy who was apparently longboarding with his dog, and they pepper spray this guy for no reason, because they assume if you're there, you must be a Trump supporter. Oh, hey, I'm curious here. You know, I think we should be happy that finally we're seeing law enforcement go after Antifa, right? Mm-hmm. This is finally, how long it's taken. But my concern is it too little too late? And is it just kind of a show, some appeasement? You know what I mean? Are they actually going to get serious across the board around the country and deal with this extremism? Well,
I want to know exactly what happened in this particular case before kind of espousing an opinion on it. But what brings me to think about, when I hear about this story was just a few months ago when Antifa was caught celebrating because their opponents were being arrested. They were celebrating when the FBI was going after Trump supporters. Yep. And my first comment on them celebrating it's only a matter of time until the state turns against you and starts arresting you. So I think this could be the first of that. I still don't know a lot of the details around this case, but do they have any charges against these individuals?
Yeah,
do
felony
we know
conspiracy and felony assault.
Yep.
Okay.
Among other crimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do they know?
Let me see if I can come down. They come. Yeah. Okay. So we have, Samuel Ogden charged with felony conspiracy and assault. We've got Jesse Cannon, felony conspiracy, felony assault. So basically they're all being charged similarly, and it's for trying to cause a great bodily harm to individuals. They're fundraising to try and deal with this. These people thought they were untouchable. Yeah. They felt like that the cops couldn't do anything, and you know what? For several years, that was the case.
Right.
Well, the cops weren't doing anything for a long time, and as we know, the cops and the feds have a lot of data. They're running huge dragnet information operations where they literally are flying drones over a lot of these protests. They know a lot more than they let on. So I would say that the federal authorities, the surveillance grids know almost everything. So to see this kind of turn when they were previously cheered on by many establishment institutions for doing these actions, to see them now face the ramifications of them shows a kind of very interesting turn. I mean, there could be just not enough right-wingers for them to go after for the petty crimes. So they're like, okay, we got to do something now.
We need to look useful quick.
Yeah, we got to do something to justify these overly huge budgets that we got. But it's going to be. I need to read more into this.
I wonder if this is actually because the midterms are coming up, and the establishment Democrats know that this is a huge problem for them.
I do think also, though, the courts have proven to be the front lines lately, and it's been pretty fascinating to watch justice at work. You had, the Charlottesville stuff came up, and those white supremacist groups or whatever were fined like so much money, enough money to completely bankrupt them out of existence, which is kind of,
But they don't look
And you had Rittenhouse, that was proper justice. The Smollett trial,
the Charlottesville thing is
trial.
interesting. Suing private citizens who have no money just doesn't do anything.
No, I mean, that's not effective, right? I mean,
Right.
It's not going to be effective for that, but it is, an interesting thing to see that the courts
Right.
are really on the front lines of this. If you look at the biggest stories that we've had lately, they've all been trials. It's all been like waiting for a verdict,
Yeah,
And that's been pretty wild. The Supreme Court oral arguments have been heating up, the whole situation with the abortion laws. Courts are the front lines. It's interesting too, because once things hit the courts, that's really where you're going to start to see what's going to happen, like what the precedent is going to be, what the law is going to be.
next year in June, it's widely believed that the Supreme Court's going to overturn Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
And that was leftist activists. There was one guy from Slate, and he was like, that's it. It's done. The Supreme Court will overturn Roe v. Wade. And everyone started freaking out. And he's like, no. It's a prediction, not a statement of fact, but it's probably true. And even like NBC was saying this. Now, I say this in the context of Antifa. How the far left will be able to rally a lot of crazy young people around this, should it happen. But that will be bad for Democrats.
Right. It will be bad for Democrats. The other thing that's bad for Democrats is that they had to base abortion rights on a Supreme Court decision, and they could never actually pass it on a federal level. It's a states' rights issue. It's not elucidated in the Constitution. When you heard the oral arguments, I guess it was whenever it was last week.
Yeah.
And Justice Thomas, who is so interesting whenever he talks, it's so interesting because he was, he hardly ever says anything. But he consistently was asking, what is the basis in the Constitution for abortion rights? Is it liberty? Is it this? And,
She's the woman, I forgot her name.
counsel just kept being like,
well, she said
it's abortion,
the 14th
abortion right.
Amendment.
Yeah.
The 14th Amendment, and it's a liberty issue.
Right.
But,
and I don't think that's good enough. And I think it's bad law. Because why is it bad law? Because it's not actually a law. Like they didn't make a law.
So
this needs to go through Congress. If they want a federal abortion rights thing, they need to make an amendment and do it. And they can't.
And that's what Kavanaugh said.
Yes.
He said, why is this going to the court and not through legislation?
That's exactly right.
Well, here's what I see happening. I think Antifa will definitely use this kind of stuff. Should they actually overturn Roe v. Wade, they're going to have a powerful media asset to rally a bunch of young, ignorant people and people who are not all with it, if you know what I mean, into getting violent.
Right.
Because their agenda is burn it to the ground and then rebuild. But the establishment Democrat, their agenda is like win the moderates over in the midterms. You've got a flailing economy. You've got abysmal job growth. You've got the Democrats trying to claim that we're in the Biden boom period. I'm like, you can only lie so much when people can't buy cereal anymore. And you're going to add to that the extremist crackpots going around smashing up windows, and they know it. So I wonder if this is preemptive. Because they're like, if we don't start arresting these people, they're going to go nuts, and it's not going to be a red wave, a red tsunami. It is going to be a red great flood.
Yes.
Build your ark now.
Right.
I'm looking into this, and these are not federal charges. It looks like this was charges from the San Diego County District Attorney. San Diego has a lot of right-wingers in there, so it wouldn't surprise me if this was like a local effort for them to go after individuals that target other people and hurt them, because they worked with other local police departments, and it looks like they have a very solid case here, as they also were able to get a whole bunch of weapons, drugs, on some of the suspects that were arrested here. I think it was 8 suspects in total. There were search warrants issued. So this seems more like a local issue rather than a federal issue. I think that also matters.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Why should it not be a local issue?
No, I'm not saying it matters. I'm just saying that it is a local issue. It's not a federal issue.
Yeah, but where California leads, the rest of the country follows. And I'm really optimistic that this precedent will kind of set the stage for some other cities to do the same thing.
Do you think it will?
I hope so.
Did you know that
No.
I learned this from the redheaded libertarian Josie, good friend of the show, that communists aren't considered people for the sake of human rights in the 1964 Civil Rights Act. So this is really interesting, actually, because it's fallen out of, I suppose, legal precedent. But apparently, in the 1964 Civil Rights Act, it says this provision will not be construed as to provide, like rights to communists or communist-associated organizations or something like that. Antifa is quite literally rooted in Weimar Germany's communist anti-fascista action or whatever, which was literally a communist organization. They use the same flag, same name. So I wonder if there's anything there we should be worried about, or I don't know. I certainly don't like the idea of the government being like, we've deemed you a communist, therefore, because they could call anybody a communist.
Yeah.
They could claim
and they
anyone.
have.
Right.
That
But
happened.
Antifa's literally a communist organization, and maybe the reason we won't actually see anything from that provision is because we don't care about it culturally, and because many of the people in federal law enforcement, I know this was state level charges, but many high-ranking, Democrats are also, at the very least, socialist, have communist leanings, or are unwilling to go after communists out of fear.
Yeah. I think they are afraid. I think they're afraid to go after. We see this at the Post-Millennial all the time, right? Like, these Antifa people are coming after us. They come after Andy all of the time. And they have this weird, this communist ideology, and they don't really care about anything else. And they just use the fear tactics. They say, like, don't fund this business, don't put your ads on this business, don't talk to this person because I'm telling you to, so trust me. And nobody ever looks into their background or looks into, like, the horrible things that they've done or what they're about.
It's about time, people started waking up to what these extremists do. They lie, they cheat, they steal, and it's all for power. And a good example is what we mentioned earlier, that they're still backing Jussie Smollett even after he's been found guilty.
Yeah.
But let's talk about lawfare, because I am really excited to talk about this story. From the Daily Dot, 2 journalists sue Andy No over his online use of their videos. They say No reposted their videos without permission, leading to online and physical attacks from his audience. I would just like to point out, I do not believe going to a court and suing for damages and then being like, people were threatening us online is any grounds for any complaint against Andy No, because he had nothing to do with that. That's immaterial. They say, 2 journalists have filed a lawsuit against Andy No for copyright infringement. Journalists Grace Morgan and Melissa Claudio Lewis say that No downloaded and tweeted their videos without permission. Their suit seeks damages and a permanent injunction prohibiting No from posting their videos without express consent. Now, before I show you this, I would like to make one definitive statement and prediction right now in the absolute. I welcome being wrong, but I will say it. Andy No will win on summary judgment. He will then seek legal fees, and he will win legal fees. This lawsuit is so laughably bad that I cannot believe they even wasted 1 red cent to file it. What Andy No is being accused of doing is so beyond fair use. I have to imagine the first thing the judge is going to say to the plaintiffs in this case is, are you sure about this? You're going to be billed by a lawyer for it. And then he might come after you. You know, Andy could file a claim for legal fees, and he will be awarded them. This is beyond frivolous. Now, there are lawsuits where it's like, now that's questionable at best. Okay, so good friend of mine, Cassandra Fairbanks, she filed a lawsuit against some reporter because she claimed the OK hand sign was a white supremacy gesture, and Cassandra lost because it is very difficult to win these kinds of lawsuits. But let me show you here from the Daily Dot. Here are the tweets from Melissa Claudio Lewis. She was on the ground filming. She said cops are getting guardian angels to protect them. Here's one where she said Multco tried to bust out but found their gate wasn't functional. They say when Andy No posted it, he wrote, police observed the rioting Antifa from behind a gate in downtown Portland last night. And as you can see, Andy No did not in fact download this video. All he did was use Twitter's internal function to repost it in a tweet. And thus you can see the woman's name, Melissa Claudio Lewis, and her video hosted on her Twitter account in Andy No's tweet. In another tweet, they say he similarly altered text. Altering text is, here's the funny thing. I just got it. If they're actually trying to make the case, like, but Andy is being sued because he also altered the text, I'm like, that's in defense of Andy. Altering text for commentary or criticism is transformative, and it's commentary and criticism.
Yeah. Exactly.
Now here's the best part. In the next tweet they highlight, you can see that Andy No is literally reposting their video directly through Twitter's tweet function. He did not download this video and re-upload it. You can see the woman Grace Morgan's name in this. So let me make this very simple. Andy No retweeted people on Twitter taking publicly available videos, providing his own commentary on them for a newsworthy purpose.
That's correct.
It is like so laughably fair use.
Yes.
That he is going to win summary judgment. That means there will be no trial. The judge is going to read it and be like, dismissed.
And it's not like they turned off the retweet function or turned off comments or anything like that.
I'm
Like,
just mad that it was
you can
Andy
do
who
that.
did it.
They just don't like Andy. And it's because Andy exposes them. You know, he exposes them so thoroughly. And I think that he is so correct to be fundraising for his defense on this one.
So
Definitely.
So is this
Yeah.
a copyright complaint or harassment complaint?
It's a
or
copyright.
Both? Copyright.
Copyright
But he
complaint.
he put their name.
Yeah.
Yes.
Attribution's irrelevant.
Yeah.
I would like to reference the notorious case of Akilah Hughes v. Carl Benjamin.
Yes.
Carl Benjamin, a.k.a. Sargon of Akkad on YouTube, uploaded raw clips from Akilah Hughes' YouTube. And the only thing he did, there's nothing in the videos. It's literally her raw clips from a longer video. And he titled it something like Liberal Sense of Self-Awareness.
Right.
She sued him. Sargon, Carl, very smart. He kept his mouth shut. And everyone asked him, and he says, look, I'm in a lawsuit. I can't speak about it.
Right.
Akilah went on Twitter, talked her mouth off, gave press comments, said, here's what I'm doing. I'm going to sue him. I'm going to take everything. The judge in that case was like, are you sure you want to go forward with this? Because this is very clear-cut fair use.
Right.
And Akilah was like, he's infringing on my copyright. He didn't provide commentary or criticism. She had to change lawyers, and Carl kept his mouth shut. Carl won on summary judgment. He filed for legal fees, and he won again. If Andy No downloaded their videos, reposted them, and then wrote LOL, that would be fair use,
Commentary.
and he
Yes.
would win.
Yep.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
So what Andy Ngo has done here is he didn't even download them. He just used Twitter's public functions to retweet it.
And all he did also
commented.
was say, and what happens is Antifa posts it and says, look at these horrible police. And Andy posts it and says, actually, there's another way to look at this situation.
Right.
Maybe take a look at it from this perspective,
Can't handle it.
and there's more than one way to look at anything. This is like a lawsuit about messaging.
Right.
Yeah, so
Good luck with that.
Morgan told the Daily Dot that they're hoping to make it harder for Andy Ngo to steal journalists' content
Oh, boy.
and change the narrative of their reporting, something he has built his career off of. If you post newsworthy video to Twitter where it can be seen by the public, someone can retweet you. That's something you've acquiesced to. Now, I will say, for those that are wondering, how do newswires work? One of the core questions of fair use is if you are infringing upon their market. Now, this is important. If I post a video on Twitter, there is literally no defense. I mean, you can try and muster up one, but they're going to be like, look, you posted the video to Twitter. It's publicly available, can be shared and embedded. I don't know what you want us to do. But if I post maybe like 20 seconds, and then I say, to license the full video, go to my website. And someone goes to my website, takes the full version, and reposts it and says, well, I saw part of it on Twitter. Now
Right.
you're actually infringing upon my market.
That's different.
So publishing something makes it now available to the public. It can be transformed. It can be commented on. To be fair, it quite literally is copyright infringement, but there is an exception to whether a judge will allow this, and it's quite clear what this is actually is. I think it's called ad terrorum. That's what the judge called it in the Akila Hughes case. These Antifa journalists are suing Andy Ngo not because they think they'll win. They're trying to drain his resources
Yes.
and force him into a fight. Now,
Well, and they want to force him off Twitter. I mean, it's so clear that they just want to force him off Twitter.
Right.
They don't want him to be able to do any reporting on them. And without Andy, I mean, Andy was at the forefront of this kind of reporting.
They tried beating him. They
tried
tried bludgeoning
beating him.
It
Yes.
didn't work.
Yes, it didn't work.
But an important question here, Libby, maybe you would know this. Was he crossing state lines? Was he tweeting? When he because that could be another reason to go after
Yeah,
him. But
there's-
the mainstream
there's-
media is really the corporate media really doesn't like that.
Yeah,
so.
they really don't like when you leave your home either. So
I know.
Oh, yeah.
they're against that.
What's amazing is they're claiming that Andy Ngo violated DMCA's. Lewis says, if I had violated DMCA's that many times, my account would no longer exist. Why Andy gets a permanent pass, I can only guess. It's because he's retweeting you,
not right.
and Twitter
Oh my
allows it.
Yes.
And when you complain, they take some of the videos down. That's it.
It doesn't look like a retweet. Is that actually a retweet?
Yes.
That
Yeah.
format?
Yeah.
So
Slightly different.
it's slightly different. What
Yeah.
Andy did was he took the direct link to the video, and this is a core function of Twitter. You can, if someone posts media, you can take their link from their Twitter and put it in a tweet and then write whatever you want, but you can see it's included her name in it.
Yeah.
This video is not being hosted by Andy Ngo's account.
And it's directly attributed.
Right.
Right, and you click the one's name and it shows you their account where they posted it.
Yeah.
And you
It's-
can see
it's-
what she said about it.
It is
Exactly.
literally a retweet of her content.
So does this function remove the other person's commentary? Or
Yes.
Is this, oh, okay.
This is you retweeting the link to their media.
Gotcha.
As
Oh,
opposed
so-
to retweeting the entirety of their tweet. So I say retweet because there's no real other word to describe what this is. Someone posts a video with their name on it. It produces a link on Twitter that you can then paste in your tweet, which is hosted by their account, not yours.
So you're basically embedding their video in your tweet.
Right.
Rather than retweeting.
I don't think embed is the right
It's
word.
not embedding.
This video is I guess technically it's the case, but it's quite literally taking their tweet, their media, and putting it in.
Yeah, it might
it's
be
like-
different. If you-
Twitter has an option when you let's call him Tweeter for now
I
on.
like
I think
that.
that's more appropriate. When you press on a video, it gives you the option to share it through multiple platforms or tweet the video, a
Right.
part of your own tweet attributing the person who created the video.
It's functionally retweeting.
Yeah, you can embed if you go to publish.twitter.com. That lets you actually embed a tweet in another tweet, but that looks
Well,
different.
that's called quoting. So like Luke said, you can just click the video and be like, share this video in a tweet. So Andy Ngo isn't downloading or
No.
stealing anything. It's like, here's a public video. Let me comment on it.
Well,
And they're
he's-
like, lawsuit.
He's really careful about that. You know, he wants to attribute. He wants to, and that's part of it too. I mean, he wants to show who the people are who are out there making these videos and doing these actions. He doesn't want to hide that. He doesn't want to take credit for anybody else's work.
So it's a Twitter feature.
Right.
Did he not retweet and just type a paragraph above their Twitter because this format looks better?
I don't know why he did this way.
I
No,
mean,
he
it's
just
a-
literally
it's a-
clicked on the video and clicked tweet
It's
video.
it's a
and
better
then
way
when
to
you do
it
that,
because you
so
then you don't
like
see.
right now I have a video up, Ian, right, and I just pressed on it, all right, and it came up, and and I have an option here. I tweet video, and then it has the video here, and I just get to write the commentary underneath it.
Nice.
This segment
So-
should be called "Teaching Ian How to Use Twitter."
You
But
boomer!
I also want to
I have a
Boomer
question.
Ian.
Hold on.
I also want to
Sorry.
stress, as it pertains to copyright law, you may disagree with this, but I can literally download this woman's video, upload it to my own Twitter account, and put H.
Hey, here's a video from Jesse Kelly.
Just the letter H.
From Andrew Pollock on Twitter. It's the exact same format. Jesse Kelly. Should Andrew
Yep.
Pollock sue Jesse Kelly?
Probably not.
No, he shouldn't.
It's clearly frivolous, and you can see how they've framed this. In the article from the Daily Dot, they're like, I'm getting harassed, I'm getting threats because Andy is posting my videos. What they don't like is that when they publish this information, they want to control the narrative. They want to frame it as negatively as possible for the police and for the city. And Andy No can take the video, provide his own commentary, and that's quite literally, look, to say it's fair use, it would be like, imagine there is a 20-foot tall giant with a big shirt that says fair use incarnate. That's
Yeah,
what it is.
that's-
There's no question. Like, the judge is going to be like, I'm confused. This is fair use. And they're going to be like, but I'm getting harassed. And he's going to be like, I don't understand. Wait,
Bummer.
what?
Sorry,
What are you
dude.
talking
Right,
about?
right. Also, online harassment. Who doesn't get online harassed? Doesn't that happen to everyone?
Yeah, the definition
Who
has changed.
cares?
The
Yeah.
definition of harassment is definitely changed. When we would do terms of service at Mars, it's like it's not the same as like harassment from the 80s. That was
Right.
when someone was like banging on your window and
That's
yelling.
totally different. This is like you wake up and somebody's like, you know, I hope you get killed. I woke up to this the other day. Actually, Andy was like, Libby, they're saying nasty things about you now. I was like, oh, good.
That's new.
Thanks. That's great.
Wonderful.
You know, and this is why I think, you know, this is why it's important to support independent journalism. It's why it's important to support journalists like Andy or outlets like the Post Millennial, because these people are coming after us. They're not coming after us for any reasonable reason. We're not doing anything wrong. They just don't like that we're actually reporting on their criminal activities. They don't want to be called out. They don't want anyone to look at their activities from the perspective of, you know, you guys are committing crimes. You are hurting other people, actually physically hurting other people. And now you're whining that somebody's saying something nasty about you on Twitter. You're out there injuring others.
I'll say this too. There are a bunch of accounts that go into the members only section of timcast.com and post those videos. And that is where they're arguably not in fair use territory. And the reason is, although they're providing commentary or criticism on our videos, this was where it gets a little bit murky. By publishing stuff that we have behind a paywall, it's arguably infringing upon our market by giving away our content for free. However, personally, that's still fine with it.
Right.
Like, when I see the leftists and they're like, Tim Pool and his members only said X or Y, I'm like, you know, look, it's commentary, it's newsworthy. I don't like they're giving this away for free, but it's kind of a preview.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be bothered with dealing with it, and I honestly welcome the commentary and criticism. It's
Well, and you
tough
can
because I
quote
don't want
things,
them
too.
to.
I mean, you buy a book and then you quote the book.
or a
you
movie
know.
comes out and you show a clip from
Right,
it,
yeah.
talk about it, fair use.
I think that's fine.
You know, the thing is, though, if there's like a movie and you take a clip from it on YouTube, they'll probably just knock you down anyway, even though it is fair use, and they're going to fight for it.
Yeah, I played a small, like even a second from the Matrix trailer, and automatically copyright strike. I'm like, what? This
It's
is
not a
crazy.
strike.
From
though.
the trailer?
Flag.
Yeah, a flag.
From the
And-
trailer?
Yeah, from the trailer.
But
which
aren't
is
they,
crazy.
isn't that out there in order to
And it wasn't
publicize
even
the
it wasn't
film?
even the trailer. It was just a few seconds as I was just like having it in the
Interesting.
background going through the browser.
Jeez.
And I'm like, okay,
Wow.
yeah, that's
That
pretty
happened to
crazy.
me with Joe Rogan, actually, because I pulled up his YouTube video and was talking about the podcast without playing it, and it automatically got flagged.
Wow.
And I had to be like, Joe, you know, it's not, can you get it off? And he was like, oh, sorry. But it was automatic. I've had it happen to me, too, where people are like, I've had angry leftists be like, Tim Pool copyright claimed my video, and I'm like, no, I didn't. Like, YouTube automatically does it, dude. And so then I've gone in and released it, be like, I don't want it, I don't care.
I don't
Say
want
whatever
your
the hell you
stupid
want.
thing.
That's the thing, right? One of the problems that the freedom faction, I guess, the libertarian little L, has is that we're willing to be like, well, they're allowed to use our content to criticize us, and then they will sue you.
Right.
So it's look, man. The sad reality is that cheaters win.
Yeah.
Cheaters win.
Not always. They
Yeah.
get
Not-
caught. Most of
No,
them
no.
get caught eventually.
That's not true. You think they get caught because some get caught, but you'd be surprised how many people are playing shady games. Look, everybody lies on their resume.
Really?
Really?
I was
Yeah.
actually
Never have.
encouraged to.
Oh, I'm being hyperbolic.
Okay.
Wait, are you,
I was
seriously
told
think
to.
people don't lie on their resumes?
As an actor, when I went to LA, they were like, "Okay, this is the way it works in LA. You're not in the union. You're not SAG. But if you want to be SAG, put your SAG on your resume. And then when they see it, they'll think you're already in the union. They'll hire you. And then when they realize you're not in the
wanna
union,
be.
they'll just put you in the union. And that's what they did.
Wow.
They hired me for a commercial, and then they just were like, "Well, all right, just give him his union card.
Jeez.
That's wild.
yeah, most
Lie.
people lie on their resumes.
Fake it till you make it."
That's like a
Yes.
fairly common thing.
I'd never lied on like a job, like a non-acting resume, but I was encouraged to by my agent, and it worked. It was crazy.
I'm actually a really poor liar. I'm just bad at it.
I felt really weird. about doing
Antifa has a penchant for lying. They're really good. Like, there's that video where Jack Posobiec got punched.
Yeah.
And the cops literally watch it, and the woman goes, I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything. And it's like, lady, the cops witnessed it. Shut your mouth.
Yeah.
But they just lie. I mean, she wasn't a good liar, to be honest. But hey, Jussie Smollett, that dude.
That's intense lying.
Yeah.
I think he should get an
That's-
Oscar.
Wow.
I think so too.
I
She should
think
get an Oscar for
we
that.
should-
Just
we-
like Simone Biles got
Yes.
the Athlete of the Year, even though she
Right.
pulled out of all the competitions.
But you know how they do, like the Academy Award, like actors will make a pitch video to like try, like that's what they do, right, Ian? Like they'll
Yeah.
have like the actors will make like a video campaigning to win.
Oh, I don't know.
yeah,
I've
yeah,
never
like to
seen
win
that
an Emmy or something. We should make an Emmy Oscar campaign for Jussie Smollett.
oh my goodness, this is a really good idea.
Yeah,
and you know what? He could use our support.
We'll have like slow motion scenes, and it'll be
Right.
like, for your consideration, Jussie
Right.
Smollett, and then it shows him crying.
Award-winning
He's like, I
performance.
fought back. I fought back.
Like,
We got to
never
use
got
some of the
Jim
drawings
Cramer
from
saying the economy's doing great, better than ever. It's strong. Don Lemon singing the praises
Oh,
of Biden,
dude.
saying gas is down 5 cents.
I'm writing this down. The
Chris
fake.
Cuomo
the
We
fake
need
news
we
Oscars.
need
The
our
fake
own
newsies.
awards.
Yeah.
Right, and Chris Cuomo saying that he treats stories about his brother the same as anything
Yeah,
else.
the top. We also need like a top globalist award. Who's going to get the most? Most.
And it's
yeah,
always it's always Klaus.
Klaus,
Andrew Cuomo
Gates,
get a book?
Soros.
No, it's always just Klaus.
He won an Emmy? Who was it that won an Emmy? Was that Andrew Cuomo?
Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah, you got to
Yeah.
get that in
He
there.
had to give it back though.
For your consideration,
He had to give it back.
the fake news Emmys.
He had a huge book deal too.
Yeah,
It's
I know.
crazy.
I
Did he give the
think-
book
And
deal
Chris
back?
Cuomo's book deal is scrapped too.
It's dead.
Oh,
Andrew
yeah.
Cuomo just like single-handedly ruined that entire
Yikes,
family.
the whole dynasty.
Really,
Aw.
you know. I mean, I guess he did get the Tappan Zee Bridge renamed after his dad,
Yeah.
but I mean, it really
That's
should
it.
just be
That's
the
all he's
Tappan
got.
Zee Bridge.
What's
Like,
it
that's
called
the-
now?
The Mario Cuomo Bridge.
Oh, gross.
boring.
The
Yeah.
Tappan Zee Bridge is classic. It's in really rosy. You know, I can tap
You know-
across the Tappan Zee.
You know the Sphinx in Egypt? That was by one of the pharaoh's kids. Apparently, it used to be a lion, a giant lion statue, and he carved the face, had the face of it carved out to be his father's face, and they hated it so much that he had disfigured this beautiful